Hello and welcome to January 2024. This is Anglo-Irish Astro Geeks. My thanks to Pico for her beautiful playing to bring us into the show. And without further ado, yes, this I know there's at least two of us in uniform. I am purely putting the blame on Susan for that one.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Take the
Anytime.
blame, no problem.
Now, just a couple of quick things. As most people are aware, Astrobotic's Peregrine probe is in trouble. They reckon they can salvage a good part of the science. However, a soft landing at the moon now is out as the propellant on board is critical. Unfortunately, there's no way it's going to happen. So a lot of people, including the Open University, have lost out. The mini rovers, Mexico had a project on board, and of course the sniffer unit that the OU built and shipped out, that's lost, unfortunately. Not quite lost in space, but well, we know what it's going to be, but that's about it. Now, a few months ago, I happened to be doing something domestically mundane. I was ironing, and I was watching a show called Abandoned Engineering, and they visited a former US Air Base, RAF Bentwaters, and there was this blockhouse that had even more barbed wire than the rest of the airbase did. And a lot of people were fussing about it. What was it? Well, you know what? I found out. It's actually not at RAF Bentwaters, it's at RAF Woodbridge. Both stations were actually tapped as being recovery by NASA in case the Apollo and Skylab command capsules rather, splashed down in either the North Sea or in the Mediterranean. So instead of taking them directly to the US, the idea was everybody was going to be flown to the UK. The astronauts would be going into decontamination, and the capsule would have all its samples and stuff checked out, transported back to the States. Interestingly, at about that time, there were lots of reports of UFOs, and this is the only genuine UFO, because for a long time this was actually classified information. So in the end, they declassified it, and what it was, a helicopter transporting the boilerplate capsule, which is now in the Smithsonian Museum, dropped it into the local forest. So, and of course, there was a lot of helicopter activity, a lot of military activity to recover this thing and get it back to where it's supposed to be. Nobody was supposed to be aware that here in the UK, we would be potentially receiving astronauts returned from the moon. But it was an interesting story, and finding out the truth, I must thank Herb Baker, because I took the story to him. I wanted to confirm it. And by gosh, he said it's actually RAF Woodbridge. But yes, it really did happen. So the UFO concern was actually a mock-up Apollo command capsule that had been dropped by accident. A lovely little story to kick the show off. Anyway, so without further ado, I think everybody else can introduce themselves.
I'm Susan McKeown, Astronomy Ireland, and the guests are. Introduce yourself, lads.
I'm Sean O'Carolan. I'm an amateur astronomer in Ireland and one of the co-founders of the Boyne Valley Astronomical Society with Susan. So yeah, that's me.
I'm Leonard Kearthy. I'm an amateur astrophotographer. I'm a member of the Carlow Astronomy Group and soon to be a sub-member of the Boyne Valley Astronomy Group.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah. It's all very, involved here. Everybody's in everybody's groups. It's great fun. Everybody's basically related. So actually, Nick, you're the only English person sitting on Anglo-Irish Astro Geeks. It's just you by yourself. It's all the Irish dudes otherwise.
As Spock would say, when the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one.
Yeah, absolutely. We're definitely in need of talking about stuff this evening.
So, shall we kick off with Sean's first, and then we can bring Lenny in and.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah.
Where do we start?
Well, I think we should start Wednesday night at about 7:30. Or was it Tuesday night at about 7:30? No, Wednesday night, was it? Yeah, Wednesday evening at about 7:30. Yeah.
Like 7:30, yeah. So look, in the background, like many amateur astronomers, this is something that I've been doing most of my life since childhood. And I guess, like, we all, as Susan say, live under the same skies, and the skies are ours. And I've always been fascinated by the constellations, the planets, everything. So obviously, being an astronomer, doesn't require you to actually go to school. You just look up at the night sky and you know what's there, learn it, and it's yours to do. But for a long time, it was basically lonely because I was doing it all on my own up here, and I didn't really know anyone else doing any sort of astronomy. And then I met a guy one time when I was out doing Whitefield astrophotography at Mornington Beach, which is not far from where I live in Ireland, which is Drogheda. And it was a very dark night, and it was in the summer, but we're talking about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we were doing Milky Way shots. And he had a star tracker with him, and I was saving up at the time to buy a telescope. And I was starting to regret it because I was like, maybe I don't need a telescope, because all I was doing was photography. And I was like, maybe I don't need a telescope now, because I'd had a telescope before. I've had binoculars. But I said to myself, no, I'd really like to have a Newtonian telescope. I'd really like to go that route. So I did invest in one, and I invested in amount for it. And what happened was, through not having had someone that could show me really how to use this properly, and I'm not an idiot, I'm actually quite intelligent, with my own rear end, but basically using all the YouTube videos and all the rest of it still took a bit more time than I would have liked to have actually grasped an equatorial mount properly, even using just the setting circles and star hopping and so on. As a photographer and a videographer, I was too used to alt azimuth. I was too used to just point and shoot. And it took me a while to tweak and cop on, the Earth's rotation, equatorial being that it is to do with the Earth's tilt in relation to the poles, and then how it orbits the sun and so on and so forth. So I kind of had a bit of a learning curve there. And what happened was, I said to myself, I think there are other people out there who are in a similar boat to me, and I tried to meet up with others and I didn't find anyone. So then I decided I would jump onto a few of the astronomy groups on Facebook, and I met yourself, Susan, and I met a few others.
You did. Yeah.
And I put it out there, would anyone be willing to meet up, and we could share tips and so on and so forth, because I still consider myself to be an amateur with regards to all of that. Photography I've been doing for 30 years. It's actually part of my profession, so that's not an issue. But the just opportunity to kind of have picked up a lot of stuff that I could have done with 4 or 5 years ago when I got my first mount would have been invaluable to me, in all honesty. And then the ability to share it with someone. So the guy I met on Mornington Beach, Trevor, he doesn't live here anymore, so he's not someone that I could have hooked up with or met up with and learned from. And I said that I tried to put this together for other people, and then we could do a meet up somewhere. So that made me think about where we could do it. And ultimately, due to safety concerns and so on, I know they do it in Dublin, but they do it in a fairly safe place with sidewalk meetups and so on. And then everywhere else I've seen them do it was an OPW site. But it also made me ask the question, where could we do it here due to the light pollution? And we are under Portal 5 skies. I mean, like, it's not bad. But I was thinking about the fact that you'd like to have more visual, because not everyone's going to have a scope or even any sort of optical device.
Yeah.
So that was when I thought about Woodbridge. And then I got in touch with the powers that be. I put the feelers out there to the general membership of Astronomy Ireland and other groups. And lo and behold, now, as you said, I just put the word out there that we were good to go, but we needed the insurance and we needed to charge the membership for that. And within 24 hours, we had more than we needed, and it was completely sold out. So we can have 25 people on site, and we put it as a ticketed event, and we actually less than 24 hours. Like, it was
23 hours, because I was actually looking at it going, what the,
Yeah, I know.
No, it's nearly as quick as Taylor Swift, like,
Yeah, well, quick Freeman. We'll steal her Grammys as well as we go along.
Yeah.
I was blown away, and not only has it resulted in a first meetup for a group of people who are in the Boyne Valley region or the County Louth, County Meath, North County Dublin, and so on and so forth region. That was when I suggested to you that we should really set up a little bit of a local club. But I had already asked you about that a couple of months ago, a few months back, was the local chapters of, and you were saying that, you'd really like to see something local set up. And now that we knew that there was enough interest, that was where we decided, right, Boyne Valley Astronomical Society. It's not just about astrophotography. It is actually about the subject of astronomy in general. So all of space.
Absolutely.
And I think that, like, at the moment, it's very much in its infancy, as we know. But I mean, I've been inundated with calls from the Boyne Valley Tourism Office was in touch with me all day. There was a load of other officials that got in touch with me. So we've had interest from as far away as Cavan and actually Tipperary, but like
and Derry.
And Derry. So yes, I'm really pleasantly overwhelmed by how it's gone. It's been. I have to be honest. I've organised events for a long time, and it's a lot of work to sell an event, even with 20 or 30 tickets. And I just couldn't believe it. And what really kind of makes me want to even be more part of a club like this is because what I've felt and found with people is that it's a mutual common interest, and it's not like other clubs where it's competitive and this sport is meant to be fun. Well, believe me, I'm an athlete, or I was before I got old, but it was never only fun. There was always a competitive nature to it. And yes, you shared some of it, but not like this. This is one of the most.
It's a very kind hobby. I find the kindness I've met. Nearly everybody I've met has just been ridiculously nice. But the kindness from other people and to share knowledge, because everyone is in the same situation that they just want to keep sharing the knowledge and they just want you to listen, and then you listen to them, and it's just wonderful. There's no competitiveness. There's none of this judgment or beginner or amateur or whatever. It doesn't matter. You're interested, you look up. If you look up, we're interested. End of story.
And ultimately, it's also about all of the, I suppose, access through the internet nowadays, I suppose, but to all of the information that's out there. I mean, Nick was talking about one of the probes. Okay, it's had issues, but like the fact that we're able to do all of that, and nowadays that they even have cameras on board and we can see some of the stuff, and it's all of that stuff is what really drives me to be interested in the subject. So. Like you said, this is about sharing. And as I said from the very beginning, I would have loved to have had a group of people who could have showed me this, but we would have had to, up here, we would have had to have traveled at least an hour to find a group of people club in Dublin. And I would have liked to have had that up this way. So I'm really delighted that we were able to get it off the ground. And now it's gonna help. Like, we've already had quite a lot of activity on the new Facebook page. It's only 36 hours old or whatever it is. It's like, bloody hell. So yeah, it's really exciting, and at the same time, it's in its infancy, but I think that that's really good because it gives us time to grow. And the OPW here in Ireland, who manage all of these sites, this one in particular is really good because it's got public toilets. It has, access to certain things. It's dark, but it's also safe. It's also safe. So we're behind. Closed gates. I have the key, and that's one of the reasons why I needed it to be a registered, well curated event. I couldn't have it being, first come and you show up, and like it can't. It has to be done very well, formal, and at the same time, it's about building a relationship with this organisation and the county council.
A trust with them that they know that the people that are coming in to enjoy their grounds will respect their grounds.
And
absolutely.
Be able to do something else with them later on as well.
Forward, you can build upon that. You can build upon the people we have in the group. You can build upon obviously the relationship with the OPW and everything else.
Exactly.
It's an amazing start, Sean, and wow, congratulations! Kind of 0 to 60 this week. I know you were doing a lot of work behind the scenes before that, but that was ridiculous.
that ridiculously good. It was, and thank you to yourself as
good.
well.
Sorry, really good. I mean, ridiculous isn't fantastic, but slightly scary as well.
There definitely
Like,
seems
oh
to
my
have
God.
been there seems to have been definitely a surge in recent years in interest in astronomy, and I don't know whether that's
Yeah.
through the advent of Facebook and social media. I mean, I started out after photography, and there was nobody around where I was. I poked around, I asked a few people.
Where are you
Didn't
exactly then? I think you did
I'm
tell me.
down in Athy in County
Oh, hi,
Clare.
yeah.
So didn't find anybody, poked around, and like that. I had travelled. I went down to the Shannonside Astronomy Club in Limerick for their star party. Couldn't find anything local. But
Yeah.
over the years, I've noticed that even on the groups Astronomy Ireland, even our own page we set up, the Carlow Astronomy Group, there seems to be a lot more interest from the general masses, and maybe because the information is more readily available, it's coming up on their feeds, and they're getting interested.
Yeah. I think also, if I can just say one thing, Lenny, like years ago, like when I was starting out, you used to have the actual paper or the laminated star charts.
Yeah.
Today, youngsters are able to actually, get involved very quickly through apps. So, Stellarium, and then there's another one, I can't remember what it's called, but there's another one very similar to Stellarium as
The
well.
Skywalker as well. There's a few of them, and they're all very, very, very easy to get, and it's seconds, and you can have, it's telling you exactly where to look and when to look,
Well,
so I think that's probably one of the reasons that it's so accessible, as you said.
Yeah.
I use SkyMap, which is from Google.
SkyMap, yeah.
So as soon as you've accurized your phone's compass, it's absolutely brilliant. So for general stuff, I use that. In fact, when I was in the States, all our local star parties were at a state park. They were at just trying to remember which one it is, because it's just east of Albany and Troy. And what we used to do was we used to make arrangements with the state authorities to use it after dark, because normally, as soon as it's dusk, you've got to be leaving.
Yeah.
As soon as it gets dark, they close the gates. But no, if everything was arranged beforehand, you could hold a star party in a state park without any problems. In fact, I'm still involved to some degree with Albany area astronomers, and they hold them there on a regular basis. And of course, I guess in the States I've been lucky. I've also got Stellarphane almost on my doorstep. It's barely a 2.5 hour drive. Stellarphane. That's the big one for all the amateur telescope makers. You see some weird, wonderful telescopes there. But most people there take the scope that they've built. But most of us, if we haven't done it, we take our own scopes, set up, and we have a bit of fun. In fact, one of the great things about Stellarphane is we have a sub party there as well, which is all the radio amateurs who are astronomers. We stick our QSL cards on the notice board. So, and normally you can always tell, you can always just look at the cars and see all the antennas and everything. And we actually have a radio star party at the same time. So we can be on repeaters, we can be on HF talking to the world as we're doing the star party, as we're actually running our scopes, which I think is absolutely brilliant, because there's one group in Michigan called they have their own repeater net for astronomers. It's called SWOG, and literally it's at 9 p.m. at night. It's on 2 meters. It's on the local repeater, and anybody can join in who's a radio amateur and an astronomer. And a little interesting fact for you: most astronomers I know are radio amateurs. A lot of the radio amateurs I know are astronomers.
Yeah, there's a crossover.
Yeah.
So, we have a lot of fun. And the greatest thing about, as you're pointing out, the best thing about star parties is there's always somebody there that can talk about the equipment they've got, how they use it, and what they're using it for.
Yeah, it's always a learning situation in any star party, any meetup. Everybody compares notes, everybody shares knowledge, which again is fantastic, and that's what you want.
and it's really a good training facility if you're new to astronomy and you're about to buy a scope, because that way you can see what people are using what types of scope for.
Yeah, for different types, exactly. Deep field and everything else. Oh yeah, there's so much to know, and you'll never know it all.
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to set this up, because ultimately, it could have been beneficial to know what I had. Like originally, as I said, I did buy another scope, and the mount, it wasn't good enough, so it did eventually fail. Again, the scope too heavy, like all that sort of stuff, as Nick was saying, is really beneficial to learn from these people at the star parties.
Yeah.
That's why I thought it was important to kind of have day tickets for this star party as well, so that people who don't have their own equipment, who may be interested, they want to come along, see what it's all about, test a few different things, and learn from the people who know, like Marty McCormick and Kieran Coppice in Dundalk. And it's going to be really interesting to see what people come away from and say, oh, I'm now going to buy my first whatever. And at the end of the day, all you really do need is your eyes, but having a pair of binoculars is even enough to see things, so
and to be honest, to me, the best thing to buy first is a pair of binoculars.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because then you can see the Jovian system, you can see the Galilean moons, you can see Saturn and the ring system. You can use it for the moon, you can use it for the inner planets very, very easily at the right time. Being very careful, of course, with Venus and Mercury because of the sun.
Yes.
And I'm gonna do my Patrick Moore bit now. You should never, ever, ever look at the sun through a telescope, and particularly do not ever trust a glass filter sold as a solar filter, because they are quite likely to shatter, which will then put the full power of the sun through your telescope. And what will happen to your eye is best left to your imagination. I can tell you. One astronomer I know did an experiment with that. He took a pair of eyes from a pig.
Oh God!
And he actually put it to the eyepiece of his telescope with the sun coming directly through it. No solar filter. And it boiled the pig's eye in about a minute and a half.
Oh God!
And that, to be honest, was that will happen.
It's a good experiment to do. Yeah.
You look at the sun directly through a telescope. Bada use film filters. They are very, very good. They do require maintenance.
Yeah.
So if it's got a pinprick in it, a very small pinprick, you can probably still use it. If there is a major hole in it, bin it, make another one.
Yeah.
But as I say, I have got, excuse me, at current count, three telescopes here in the UK, and I've got 2 telescopes in the States. And it's like radio gear. If you're an astronomer, you collect kit.
Yeah.
So be prepared for that. But I've got a 102D refractor on an Alzheimer mount. Sorry, I've got a same size Mac, and I've got a 16-inch non-go-to Dobsonian telescope in the garden. That's what I've got here in the UK. In the States, I've got a Celestron 10-inch Newtonian reflector, which needs a bigger mount, because it's fine for visual work on the gem mount that comes with it, but it's not brilliant for astrophotography. It's the OTA, the optical tube assembly, and the camera is too heavy for the standard mount. And I've also got my Tasco 4.5-inch Newtonian reflector, which I've had for 30 years, maybe 35, 40 years. It's that old.
Yeah, but they do last.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's not like anybody throws any of that stuff out. Even if you're not going to use it, it gets put in a box and it gets put somewhere, and then every so often you go and have a look.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you donate it to somebody starting out, or
Exactly.
done.
Yeah. Recycling is a great thing.
Yeah. Yeah, but as you touched on, starting off, it's like binoculars is great. Also, familiarizing
Fantastic.
yourself with the night sky, being able to identify objects in the night sky, and then see where that passion takes you. It might lead you down I want to buy a telescope, but you just have to understand that there is a bit of a learning curve. It can be a bit frustrating when you start out, but as Sean
Mm.
said, when you have the likes of the astronomy groups, you have people to bounce off and ask questions and say, "Hey, look, can you show me how to use this? Or,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing here, or I'm struggling with this.
I
Can you
think
help me?"
the other important thing is to know what you're interested in. Are you purely going to be a lunar observer, planetary observer? Do you need aperture because you're going in for deep space and comets? Most of the all the kit I've got can do inner planets, the moon, the light bucket, the big dog. Yes, that's definitely can be used for fuzzies, for deep space, for nebula and galaxies. And if it had a drive, I would certainly use it for very, very dim comets. But the smaller items I have, I find really, really good for the moon and for looking at
Mm.
Venus and Mars and Jupiter and Saturn.
Yeah.
To
I
be
was in
honest,
a field about 3 weeks ago by myself at like 5 o'clock in the morning and managed to get Jupiter and its moons lined up in my binoculars. And I jumped up in the air and I was like, woohoo! And I was like, oh, I'm by myself and it's dark. There was nobody to help me and there was nobody to celebrate with, but I was just delighted because I mean, the new binoculars as well. So I was just making sure they were half decent. But it's just fascinating, with whatever equipment you have, whatever stage you're at, just do it.
but as I say, really start off simple, start off with binoculars.
Yes.
Because then end of the day, if you find astronomy isn't for you, then you haven't lost a lot of money.
No.
And you can use the binoculars for other things,
Yes. Of
for
course. Yeah.
bird watching or whatever else.
Fine and
Exactly.
neighbours, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And the nice thing about binoculars as well that I found was that at the front of, well, I don't know about all of them, but at the front of the ones that I bought, there was a little adapter connection for attaching to to a
To a
tripod.
tripod. Yeah.
So what I did was I bought a monopod, and a monopod was so much simpler because essentially it's like a telescopic tube with a mount at the top of it for sliding on and off the binoculars, just like an ordinary tripod would. And you can buy tripod feet for them as well. So I bought one of those, and like that was literally how I then kind of said I'd like to buy a refractor. I thought a refractor would be the way I wanted to go, and with an alt azimuth tripod and stuff, like it was okay. And for the moon, it was grand, but it wasn't a good one. It was really cheap, I have to be honest. But again, I knew I was going to save up. And then what I did was, as I was explaining, I did buy. I think the telescope is actually all right, but it was an 8-inch, but it is a flat mirror. It's a spherical mirror, so that's also something else that would have been beneficial to know. And having
Beforehand.
through a parabolic versus, a spherical versus a parabolic. The parabolic wins hands down every single time, whether it's visual or photographic. For me, anyway. But now I know there's several other types of spherical telescopes, the Cassegrains and stuff. I didn't know that they were designed specifically for planetary, for instance. So it's that kind of stuff that like is really interesting, and you really do need someone who knows about that kind of thing before an opportunity to maybe test it before you go ahead and invest money. Because I mean, I think I'm into it now for about 1,500, and I'm going to be spending another 6 this year.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to be upgrading my system to a Go 2. I don't have Go 2 on the mount at the moment. It's just an ordinary tracker, and I have a guide scope with a guide camera. But I mean that's built up over time, and it's a bit of a pinch each time because you're talking 300-400 euros each time. So
it is an expensive hobby when you get into it. Especially
yes, but I
just want
to say something. It's an expensive hobby, right? But if you get your kids into astrophotography or astronomy, they won't have money for drugs. So
astronomy is your drug.
Sure.
I mean, think of the health and safety.
Well, the thing is, though, what upsets me is you see these telescopes on sale in stores 5,000 times zoom, and you can see the Andromeda Galaxy. And
Yeah,
they've got this beautiful picture, probably taken from the Hubble or by Mount Palomar, which is a 200-inch telescope.
Mhm.
And they're telling you you're going to see the Andromeda Galaxy in that detail. You're not.
Yeah. That's one of the drawbacks. They
Yeah.
try to
Well,
sell
if
you,
you
sell
put
you,
it
sell you
on
the
top
world.
of another, yeah, sorry, Lenny, if you put it on top of another scope, you might, you know.
Well, you could probably use it. I wouldn't even use it for a guide scope, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think
but
it's
Sorry,
massive.
sorry, Lenny, go ahead there.
no,
No, I
but
was just gonna go on, Sean.
no, I was just going to say that you'll know from doing astrophotography that if you've used the telescope as well, you know that when you take a photograph of the Andromeda Galaxy and when you look at it through your eyes, what you see through the eyepiece is like it's literally just a little bit of dust, a little bit of
Yeah.
gas. And when you look at it in the back of your camera, it's a bit brighter, it's a bit of a glow, but it's still not much more than that. It's not until you actually stack and process it that you get anywhere close to an image that resembles a galaxy.
Yeah.
But then the learning curve that we all go through is, having to know like how much time you have to spend taking pictures and how many of those are usable.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess it goes back to the point of, they're trying to sell you these scopes with they said pictures of wonderful things on the box. But realistically, if you were to look at that object through an eyepiece, you're not going to see in that detail because our eyes just aren't sensitive enough. So you just have to
Yeah.
be, realistic expectations of what you are going to see. If you go and buy a telescope and go to look through it, you're not going to see like Hubble-esque type pictures with your eyes. It's just not possible.
Now,
The other thing, sorry, the other thing is it puts you off. You get this telescope, you think it's going to show you wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
It might show you the moon in quite decent detail. I had one back in 1969, but then it was proper glass lenses, and it had spherical aberration,
Yeah.
and everything. It wasn't brilliant, but it did the job. I got mine just before the Apollo 11 moon landing. Yes, I'm showing my age.
You were looking
Yeah.
at the moon to see if you could see the Apollo moon landing. That's
Yeah.
what you were
Yeah.
really doing.
Yeah, not you're going to, but
Yeah.
I to this day, I blame Patrick Moore, Arthur C. Clarke, and Mr. James Burke. It's all their fault.
Unrealistic expectation.
Well, no, because they got me hooked. They got me hooked
Yeah.
on the moon. And another a very apt Patrickism, if you like, is learn your way around the sky. Learn how to star hop around the constellations, because to be honest, you're going to have much more fun. And if you haven't got a go-to scope, you by using the constellations, you can find your targets so easily, like the planets, some of the brighter galaxies and nebula. You can do that much easier. And in fact, I was thinking about the fact that in the state park I used to go to, looking in a certain direction at the right time of year, I could make out M31 in the sky. If your eyesight's good enough, you can just about make it out. You can't see detail, but you can make out where it is.
Yeah.
It's like the fuzziest patch in the sky.
Yeah.
But just even to that point, Nick, even with a go-to, because I have a go-to at starting out and being able to identify stars in the sky, because we were trying to find alignment stars.
Yeah.
I mean, when I started out, I got caught out with a line into the wrong star and wondering why my telescope just wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. But then I realized, I needed to be able to identify the stars, so that if I'm supposed to go to Vega, I know where Vega is, and that's the star I'm supposed to line up. So it is definitely beneficial to know your way around the sky.
There was a
I
lovely
agree with that. There's a reason why I think that's very important, because in Cygnus, for instance, with the three stars that are in a line there, and we like Mirfac. What's the other one? There's three in a line.
Capella.
And when you're trying to find Andromeda, I use usually Cassiopeia, depending on how you want to say it, and Shadar, come down, blah blah blah. But like quite often, I'd use the three bottom stars below as well, and I can confuse those sometimes because there is another one that's actually very bright, very close to it as well, and it's like, okay, am I aligned with the right star? And using your setting circles, I think like all those things that I think you were going to talk about that now, Lenny, as well. But like there's a curve that you really do have to overcome in order to be able to do the photography, or even use it visually the way you really want to use it. And knowing the constellations is extremely important.
Yeah. That's it, especially like as we touched on, right? You're not going to be able to see, Hubble-esque type images when you look through the telescope. So if you're trying to find an object in the sky and you have your telescope pointed to where you think that is, you need to be able to identify, well, am I in the right location now? Should I be able to see this object? It'd be very frustrating when you're looking through the telescope going, where's Orion? I can't see Orion, the Orion Nebula. Where's that? Because that's pretty bright and it's pretty easy to see. And you're going, it's not there because you just haven't really located yourself in the sky. So it's a valuable skill to have.
And of course, the best thing about being in the Northern Hemisphere, we do have some of the best constellations for not only for just finding the celestial North Pole, but to find your way around the sky. You've got Ursa Major, Ursa Minor. You've got Cassiopeia. And at this time of year, Orion is so... Oh, in an urban area, Orion stands out.
Yeah,
There's
it does.
Cassiopeia and Ursa Major and Minor. So
and Leo comes up after Orion in the night sky as Ursa Major twists around, and then you have Leo coming across behind Orion, and Cancer obviously in between. So again, yes, and obviously during the summer months, Gemini, well, kind of, around that time, spring, summer, you're going to have... I think that's also something that was really interesting for me as well. The first time I seen some photographs of Orion from down under, that you're still able to identify the constellation, even though it's the wrong way around.
It's upside down, yeah.
Yeah, you still know clear as day.
Yeah.
And some of my relations live down there, and yeah, like we would discuss the whole thing with navigation at nighttime and stuff like that. And that's one of the things that I want to talk about with our star party, because they would have used the stars to navigate up the Boyne when they were coming for the Battle of the Boyne.
The Battle of the Boyne, my God. We must mention that, my God.
Yeah.
It's such a big deal. Jesus.
So yeah, I think there's a hell of a learning curve when it comes down to using a telescope, full stop.
And of course, the other interesting thing is celestial navigation is still a very important skill for mariners, because you can generally orientate yourself against the compass using the night sky. And apparently the US Coast Guard and the Royal Navy are the two main people who still teach how to use a sextant and take sun shots.
That's correct.
It went out with GPS and inertial navigation systems, but they fail. And basically, if you know how to use a sextant and a set of tables, you can pretty much put X is where the ship is on a map anywhere in the world.
Yep, which is exactly why we also have gyroscopic compasses on board, because sometimes things can go wrong, even with your magnetic compass. And when you've got no power, gyroscopic compass can be extremely invaluable. And having a sextant, you just can't go wrong once you know how to use it.
Yeah. Well, you can get cheap plastic ones which are fairly good, which are decent for training. I've seen them in yacht shops, along with the manuals and how to do it. Maybe when I get really bored in the summer because there's not enough night to actually image, well, I can cheat. I can still image the moon. But maybe I'll pick up one of these old cheapo plastic sextants and play with it and try and learn how to use it. You never know when you'll need the actual ability.
True. Until you need it.
That's it. That'd be the ultimate test. Nick will drop you in the middle of the ocean and you have to tell us where you are.
Yeah, I mean, bring the plastic one, Nick. Just see what happens.
Well, the old joke used to be amongst my mates. Yes, drop Nick in a swimsuit in the Arctic. He'll be in Florida within a week, sunning himself.
Yeah,
I did outdoor survival, so one of the things they teach you is basic celestial navigation. You look for a certain star, and depending on which way you want to go, that's the star you follow from rise to set, because you know where the moon and the sun rise and set. That gives you a very good navigational constant. So it's then picking the right celestial object when you've got when it's new moon or when to keep going. It's amazing how astronomy comes into everyday life, really.
Oh yeah.
We're all hooked on our GPS systems, but they go wrong. We're heading towards solar maximum a
Yeah.
year early. Solar cycle 25 is coming this year, not next year.
Well, how come?
Because people forget our sun is a G2 variable dwarf, and it's decided to be variable.
Right. Okay. I always thought they were the same. There you go.
Well,
The sun's like
every now and again, the sun
it
does
decides not to be. Yeah. Fair enough.
at the minimum no sunspots at all, and we had basically a mini ice age. You could go
Yeah,
on.
and we had mild sunspots towards the last part of last year. It was crazy, like
So
there's-
yeah, it's all astronomy.
Mhm.
Whether it's solar weather, solar space weather, you're looking at the stars, the planets, comets, fuzzies.
Mm.
It's all a part of astronomy in reality. It's just it's more okay. It's more astrophysics.
Mhm.
That would be the best description. But you need to know some astronomy as well in order to be an astrophysicist
Oh
at
yeah.
basic level. And
I'll just show you my new book,
yeah,
Astrophysics for Babies. Can you all
Cool.
see that? Now, I know it's probably backwards, but I got the whole set. So I mean, I'm starting small, so I might get there one day.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell us you wrote that book, Susie. That's why I thought
No,
you might
no,
do a book.
no. But you know what? I need to read it all by myself.
Cool.
No, I got the whole set for Christmas. Somebody thought it was funny, but the joke's on them because you know what? I love them. I read the whole set. So, and then like my grandson wanted one. I was kind of like, no, they're nanas. They're not for children.
well,
But,
we're lucky. Here in the UK and Ireland, you can get BBC television, I guess. Still,
yeah,
you got the Sky. We got the Sky at Night.
yes, it's quite nice.
Only show in the world that's been going since the dawn of the space age.
It's an
Even
amazing
there was
program.
a brief
Yeah.
hiatus when Patrick died, but his godson, Chris Lintop,
Yeah.
and Maggie Pocock, they've now got the team together. They've got astrophotographers on the show regularly. They've got some of the top space
Oh,
scientists
they do. Yeah,
in the
it's
world
amazing.
on that
Yeah.
show. They have access to some of the greatest instruments in the world. Maggie was in Atacama recently for a show, I think last year, and she was watching the building of the LSST, and she was investigating all the facilities the astronomers there have. And to be honest, if you're interested that much, you can make the big leap. You can go to college and uni and do astronomy.
Yeah.
There's no money in it, unfortunately.
No.
But you can get an astronomy degree, and
Yeah.
well, still your basket, really. Most of it's done at home. People don't realize there is no real time at the scopes for professionals. It's all on data sets now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The biggest, according to one of my professional friends at Mount Wilson, he says the biggest joke is on us, the professionals, because we now depend on amateur astronomers even more so for actual images and for data. Variable
Yeah.
astronomy is an amateur domain that's a pro-am collaboration. Lunar work is still going on at a great pace. We're now mapping micro meteorite impacts on the moon for NASA for the return to the permanent moon base and everything else. So we have so much we can do as amateur astronomers. It's a completely different field these days. It used to be everyone used to poke fun at the Victorian amateur astronomer and his homemade telescope. W.H. Hay, the comedian, he was actually a very learned astronomer, and he discovered and documented a white spot on Saturn. But he didn't want any public acknowledgement that it was W.H. Hay that found it, because he was best known as being a funny actor in the movies.
Mm.
He was also during the war an oceanographer
Yeah.
for the Royal
Right.
Navy.
He didn't want to be known for his brains then. So Sean, just back to the start party. So what can we tell, other things can we tell people about, as in like what time do we start and what time do we finish, that kind of stuff, and weather permitting?
Yeah, so basically we are obviously at the mercy of weather. It doesn't matter where you're in the world. But even if it is only just slightly cloudy and it's not windy, there's no rain, we'll go ahead with it, because we're going to have a 70% moon that night, and it'll be really interesting, as well as being able to see one or two of the the outer planets, not the inner. The inner will come up much later in the star party, but we'll also be able to still image one or two of the brighter nebulae that are in the sky. The time that I would recommend people arrive at would be about 3 o'clock, thereabouts, who are day visitors. For those that are coming to set up their scopes, 3 o'clock would be the latest I would get there, because obviously it's going to be dark at around 25 to 5, quarter to 5. It's definitely going to be, black. And up there, there's not going to be any light, because I'm going to be asking them to turn off lights for the sake of us actually visual and imaging. But I think it's going to go the whole way through to 8 a.m. the next morning, because we've permission to be there for the entire night. And I'm going to bring along one tent anyway, just in case anyone wants to switch out with me. I'm going to have a camping bed in there for myself, and then anyone just for a nap. So if anyone wants to jump in instead of jumping in their car, there'll be a bed. So bring along that. And then the other thing I would say is, so bring along a sleeping bag if you want, but also a nice, very warm, very, very waterproof coat. Wrap up your feet warm, a scarf, a good hat, layer up, exactly. Base layer, fleece, nice warm top, and then coat. And then the other thing I would say is, feel free to bring some coffee with you if you want, but my advice overnight would not be to have likes of Red Bull or anything like that. Don't be drinking any energy drinks. It's just stick to water and plenty of nice fresh fruit and some good food. It's a safe environment, so we're not going to be too worried about slipping and sliding. It's an asphalt ground, and you've been there yourself. It's pretty flat. So other than that, then there is a checklist on the actual Facebook page for the event. There is a link that's been emailed out to everybody that has actually gotten a ticket, and you and I will probably do a little bit of a Facebook Live thing or whatever else, so people can hopefully see what's happening. Now I'll bring along a flashlight for that, because obviously we're going to be in the dark, and we'll stir the boys that are all doing their flashing.
I know, but especially once the eyes start to acclimate or acclimate to the darkness, and then you come out with a light, they're just going to be like, "Would you back off?" So
cover the light with some red film.
Well, we'll get away with it somehow. I actually have a very powerful red light. But I have this little
man-made. We can also walk a little bit further away from them, that kind of stuff.
We can. But I think as a first one, it's going to be really fun to just get to know people, and essentially the people who don't have any equipment are coming along to be able to see how it all works. And I think the memories they come away with from that should be really. They'll be unique anyway. They'll be very, especially if they get to see something they've never seen with their naked eye before.
It's such a special thing.
And in a dark sky like that, it should be fairly easy to do that. So 2 p.m. is when people are more than welcome to start coming to set up telescopes. The gates will be closing at 4 p.m. because that's the official time that the place has to close at. So you need to be there before 4 p.m. in order to be able to get in once you have your ticket. And then I'll be able to let you out as you need to go throughout the night, because I'll have the key. But those are the official parameters I have from the OPW in order to be able to run the event. So 8 o'clock then will be when we are all leaving, I suppose. Because it's going to start getting into early morning twilight light, probably around 6:30, 7 o'clock. So there's not really going to be much. We'll probably be breaking down at about 6 a.m.
Also, I suppose you should say that if people do need to leave, we could make times throughout the night, maybe, to let, if people need to go, we could let them out in groups, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I will be able to, like, I mean, we'll have the key, and
Yeah,
I'm going to be imaging much. This one's really exciting for me to be able to kind of just get to know people, and
yeah,
I'm going to coordinate the event as best possible. So I'm not really going to be too bothered about doing much. I'll have my scope there, but not imaging. I'll have it set
yeah,
up, and I'll have batteries for tracking, and I'm going to see about a couple of other things that we'll discuss offline. Uh, but I think you're going to have approximately 10, maybe 11 people with telescopes on the night,
yes,
and then binoculars.
yeah,
So it's it's going to be very interesting. And then there's a few people bringing along some additional filters for people to try out, and like
yeah. I
that's the
think
fun
that's
part, that we get to
fantastic.
try different stuff. And so
Hmm.
yeah, it's 2 p.m. Is like, I mean, 2 p.m. all the way through to 8 a.m. That's a long old day, you know.
Yeah, and you should probably just go set up the tent and go straight to bed. Until
Yeah,
everybody gets there.
well, like why not? Because you're going to be
Yeah.
open tonight.
Ah,
So
damn it, yeah. No, it'll be great. It'll be wonderful. And fingers crossed with the weather. So,
yeah, fingers crossed for the weather. If it is rainy and stormy and all that, we will, and overcast clouds completely without any let up, we'll reschedule because
absolutely.
we do have permission to do that.
Yeah.
But one of the other things about this place is that we actually have access to good toilets, and I mean these are
Yes,
really
they're lovely
high,
toilets. Yeah, been there
yeah,
myself.
toilets. So
Mm.
for both male and female, but especially when you have ladies attending, it's rather than them, where do I go? At least decent,
Here's a tray over here, girls. Come on. Yeah, I know. Been there.
Yogi
I
Bear
think
comes in asking you for a sandwich.
I think Sean, one of the questions I've seen pop up one or two times is there power on site?
Yes.
We
There is
are
power.
waiting for confirmation on whether we're going to have access to
Mm.
power from the actual facilities themselves. I am trying to get I think my petrol generator just needs to be run a little bit, but I'd be
Yeah.
able to run for maybe two or three rigs with that.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm gonna, if that works, then I'm gonna bring that with me.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, my brother's going to bring I think he has a spare power pack as well. So I'm sure people will bring stuff like that, you know.
I
Um,
have some, I have one spare D battery power pack. I have my
yeah.
own D battery power pack. But
Yeah.
and I mean, you'd probably get 6 to 8 hours out of it. But it also depends on the temperature of the night, because battery
Exactly.
power drains
Hmm.
in the cold much
Yeah.
quicker.
In the cold. Yeah.
But yes, Lenny, I'm working to see what way they would be able to sort out power, because again, you have to remember that comes under the insurance side of things as well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Uh, because if they're giving us access to power, there's a risk to their actual building,
Yes.
unless there's an exterior power socket. Exterior power sockets are much more safe for them to be able to do that with. Um, so then
Which I'll be honest, I think they may have. I mean, they with the gardens and everything else, they may have to, you know. But we wait
yeah,
and see.
exactly. So we
Mm.
we just need to bring one of those cables with us
Yeah.
with a 3-pin extension socket on the end, and
Mm.
that's it.
Yeah.
But I don't think everyone's going to want to have that much power, and I'm not going to need power on the night because I'm only going to be visual. That I'm not going to be
Yeah.
imaging on the night. So even if 4 or 5 people needed power, I'm sure they might. We'll work something out with them. Just put it that
Yeah.
way.
We could
We'll
just
work.
go. Yeah. Yeah. People will share as usual.
But at this point in time, I still can't guarantee anything, because there's still, it's all OPW stuff, so it's red tape and all that. They need to get
Hmm.
permission. Eleanor is being very, very helpful in Dublin. Dolores, who runs the facilities in Meath, is being extremely helpful. She was
Yeah.
only more than happy to help us out. But
Yeah.
again, we don't want to tread too much on toes for the very first event.
Absolutely. The first outing as well should be a get to know you, as well as let's see some stuff, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So looking forward to it. I hope you can make it, Lenny, as well. Nick, I'm sure you probably won't be taking the plane over, but you're more than welcome.
Well, I'll see what I can do. There's no promises. We're getting -10 next week
Are you?
here in England. That's what
It's
we're.
Baltic here today.
But I just remembered where the place was I used to go. It's Grafton Park,
Right.
and I would say it's probably Bortle 2 to 3.
Wow.
There are places in the park where we can get it down to Bortle 1, because the trees really do screen out an awful lot of the glare from Albany and other places. But that's
Okay.
why Grafton, like I said, you can make out the fuzzy patch that's M31, the Andromeda Spiral, because you
Yeah.
can your eyes adapt very, very well, and
Yeah.
when you use averted vision instead of just looking for it straight on, you're looking from the corner of
Yeah.
your eye. That's when
Yeah.
you can make out some of these really faint objects. So that's why we could get away with it because it was a really, really dark place.
When it's that dark, the planets start looking back at you.
Start waving.
Hey,
Somebody on
That's
Europa
they
looking
start
back right
imaging
now.
you, like, you know.
yeah, that's the dream.
Yeah.
That's the dream for me, is to get down to Kerry to the Dark Sky Reserve,
Yeah.
have a look at their skies.
We
But
did have one person from Cork who wanted to come to our star party, but he couldn't get accommodation up this way
Oh, right. Yeah.
for the next day. Obviously, he was going to be up all night, but that's a bit of a trek now, Cork to Drogheda, just to
Yeah.
come to a star party now.
6 hours or so. Yeah.
But I think that's indicative then that they need to have their own. There needs to be something down that way for
And there
people.
for him. Yeah.
yeah,
So cool.
well,
So
lessons
yeah,
to learn from your star parties, you can pass on to people in the Cork area so they can set their own up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do all of this, was to be able to share, spread it,
Hmm.
and get people involved. And who knows, like you can build a small community from that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's usually like-minded people. It's usually people on very similar wavelengths. And I have to say, astronomy, most people are really funny too. I've noticed that.
Oh yes,
Well, yeah,
sense of humor.
you have to have a sense of humor, especially when you're out in that cold.
And I was going to say, sitting there at 4 o'clock in the morning by yourself, just going, I'm just going to make myself laugh so I feel warmer. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually at Newgrange a few years ago with just my camera and my tripod photographing. I was trying to get the Milky Way over the mound over Newgrange.
Right.
And this person drove by at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was like the Spanish Inquisition. What are you doing here? What's your name? Where are you from? It's like,
Oh,
I'm
you want the
taking
Spanish
photographs.
Inquisition? Try being on top of a place like Ivanhoe Beacon at 6 o'clock at night, and you're in your car and you've got all your radio gear on, and there's this tap at the window, and it's the local police officer's been told there's somebody up there because they can see brake lights. What you doing? Oh, I'm doing DX, talking to the world, which is what I was doing. I was literally talking to the world. That, and of course, it's got fantastic. If it's a clear night, you can really see an awful lot from the beacon. Particularly if you're facing away from Luton and Dunstable, you've got a much better sky. So, and then of course, oh, would you know that that's so and so and so and so and so and so, and then the cop goes, yeah, okay, fine, you're not a terrorist or anything. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Seriously,
You're just in there, I'll leave you be.
yeah. Apparently, he told me that they reported somebody who was an enemy agent contacting Mossad. I think they said I was a Russian agent or something, which
You
I
do
thought
have
was
that look,
totally
all right, Nick.
hilarious.
You do have that look. You give me that vibe, all right.
But
Looks a little bit but
It's
like
the
Brian
yellow
Cox.
uniform. It's Chekhov.
Yeah.
But a little bit like the other Brian Cox from the movies, the one that's in that spy movie with
Obsession. No.
Red, isn't it? Red Notice, isn't that what it's called, with Bruce Willis?
Uh, yeah. I can see it.
Patrick Moore made
He's gone very quiet.
He's like, I'm busted. They're onto me. That's Madania.
see that. Well, Patrick Moore was in Doctor Who.
Was he? Never knew that.
He was. I'm trying to remember which incarnation it was. I think it was same guy who played Prince Philip in The Crown. I think it was one of his, either him or Eccleston. I can't remember exactly, but he was in Doctor Who because they needed to use. No, it was David Tennant. I beg David Tennant one, because
Right.
he needed to use all the top astronomers in the world, because the Indian government was currently responsible for the defense of local space, and to make sure nothing came crashing down. It was one of those really convoluted stories. But Patrick Moore and quite a few well-known scientists were on the show. I think Patrick was on for about minute and a half.
Very good.
He used to be the game master.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's right. He used to do that. Oh, for God's sake, I forgot all about that. Was that was he a hologram?
Yes.
No,
He
he
was, yeah. Yeah, he was. He was a holographic head, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
right.
Yeah, Stephen Hawking was on Star Trek as well. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Mm.
He's been in loads of TV shows, though.
Yeah,
In fair.
I think so,
He was in The Simpsons and everything. Like, he's been
and
everywhere.
as well. Yeah, he did lots of stuff there.
He was more
And
of
he
a
was on Monty Python. They did a song and they're going about the size of the galaxy and everything else. And on comes Stephen Hawking in the video.
Did he?
Oh.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ! I didn't know that either.
I think what it was a stage show that Python was doing, and they just done the Spanish Inquisition, and the next sketch featured Professor Stephen Hawking.
Right. Wow.
Came in on it, and as the video fails out and the whole of space is warped, he's seen going straight into infinity. In his
And beyond. Mm.
So the lesson is, you want to deflect away from the conversation revolving around being a Russian spy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, we're all on to you now. That's it.
Oh,
He's gone
Come out of something else now. He's trying to deflect again. Deflector disengage.
It's not the Enterprise he's on. He's up in
I
Mir.
know, yeah.
yeah, I'm up.
I
I'm
mean,
way
it's very
high up all
every
this.
single episode. The deflector dish work.
Yeah.
Don't you know we're hiding behind the moon so we can't be discovered?
Who? You are on, or is it just you?
The dark side of it.
The dark side of it is right.
There is no dark side to the moon.
I know.
That was Led Zeppelin, I believe. Well, no,
Pink
Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd, yeah.
Pink Floyd, yeah. Dark Side of the Moon. That's another thing I have an argument with. Oh, it's
Petty.
the dark side of the moon. No, it's the far side of the moon.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as the dark side, because we can't see the near side of the moon. The far side is illuminated by the sun.
I don't think it's a visual dark side. It's a radio dark side. It came from NASA. Whenever passing behind the moon, it was radio dark. So it's the dark side of the moon.
Oh, do you go radio dark and do so? You would, yeah.
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah.
Which is
right,
why China stole a lead when it sent Chang'e 5 to the far side of the moon, because they did what even NASA has said was impossible. They used a satellite relay from the far side to contact the rover on the far side to beam the signal to Earth. They even put a transponder for radio amateurs to use and track, and a camera that radio amateurs could task with taking pictures of the moon. So the actual satellite that was part of the Chang'e 5 mission was multi-purpose. It had a camera on board, a radio transponder, and it could be accessed by radio amateurs to take pictures of the moon.
I don't know. I still think it sounds like more spy stuff.
Definitely spy stuff. I think the Chinese got their ideas from Independence Day.
I got the Chinese got their ideas from Nick.
Actually, NASA have had plans. That was something that they had discussed, but back during the Apollo program, it was shut down as being too technologically difficult. But things have changed since the 70s.
Things have changed,
70s.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that Pioneer 10, 11, Voyagers 1 and 2, they're all based on transistor logic. They're not using integrated circuits. They're using proper old-fashioned transistors, because it's easier to provide radiation-hardened transistors than it is integrated circuits. And we certainly didn't have the density on ICs that we would have been required for the later Pioneers and certainly the Voyager missions. So the technology wasn't there to use integrated circuits, but the transistors were already available as EMP hardened devices. And this is what people forget. The space program is trickle down from the military. In fact, the computers we're using for this Zoom call came to us from the space program, because NASA needed a computer that was light enough to be fitted into the lunar module and command module. and that could be programmed. So that was what caused the original CPUs, the original 486 series, and it's 386s to be created, was the requirement for NASA's lunar lander at the time, because it was all about weight. So Intel produced the first CPUs that we know today. And people don't realize it, that even this smartphone,
Yeah.
you take it for granted, the cameras came from the military programs.
Yeah.
A couple of devices.
Yeah, well, there's a huge amount of stuff from any of the space program, any of the military programs that we use every single day, especially the satellites and stuff. People haven't a clue that if we didn't go this far and go into space and use all that technology and invent all that technology, they wouldn't be able to get around the planet at the moment. They wouldn't be able to use their phones, wouldn't be able to do so much stuff. Wouldn't be able to set their watches, you know?
Well, computers would fill your room.
Yes.
To do what we're doing today would fill a room of your house.
Investing in space is investing in everybody, you know?
Exactly. And that's the big thing. Everything we have as amateur astronomers, all our go-to mounts with GPS, all our charge coupled devices, even these babies are all from the space program.
Yeah.
Because the optical sensors that we use in these came from a requirement for lightweight and to replace having to recover film capsules from spy sats.
Yeah,
So
see, we're back to spies there again, because that's what drove the cameras, was the spy satellites.
If it wasn't for spy sats, we wouldn't have these CCD cameras today.
Well, necessity is the mother of invention, you know.
Yeah, and the Hubble Space Telescope mirror again was a trickle down from the same programs.
Yeah.
So
wasn't there 12 more or something they couldn't use as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, ridiculous. They were just sitting there and they just couldn't be used. They were made privately.
Yeah, so they were actually made for government programs.
Yeah. And then they were never used, and they're sitting there, and I don't know if they're still sitting there, but they couldn't be used by NASA. They couldn't be used by anyone. So I mean, what a waste.
Yeah,
you know?
at least 4 people. There were several blanks made and polished.
Yeah.
And at least 2 of them are in private hands in telescopes already.
Yes. Yeah, I know.
So again, it's everything we have, everything we use for our hobby. We got thanks to the space program in one way or another, including some of our fabrics.
Yeah, like the ones we're wearing, Nick. The absolutely itchy, annoying, cheap crap we're wearing. Yeah.
But my miniaturization on the scale we have today certainly wasn't on the cards before. Valves, but I have a radio transceiver in the States. It's got valve finals. I love it. It also heats the living room for me when it gets really, really cold. I can't be bothered to turn the heating on. Just crank it up and start talking to the world and let that warm the house up. Ironically, it works. But valves in space don't work because they are very fragile and the vibrations from launch will destroy them. So that's why we have the CPUs that were built by Intel. We have transistors, which are very happy, thank you, to be being used in space. To some degree, they're very resistant to cosmic radiation, to solar radiation. So there you go. We're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Right. Well, I think we should finish up there, Nick. I know you need to get on. I need to get on myself. And I'd like to thank the 2 boys. I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a great laugh.
Thank you.
And very informative. And as usual, I learned loads. I mean, I think I know stuff, and then I sit down and talk to other people. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know that. So thank you so much. So I'd like to say good night from myself.
It's good night from him.
Good night from you.
Her.
Yeah. Good night from him.
And don't forget to keep looking up.
Yeah.
Yes. Clear
Good night,
skies.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
ah, ah, ah.